Good morning, everyone, and a very big hi to all the IFTians. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday morning and taking the time out to hear out Sarjeev. Sarjeev has over 20 years of experience following his MBA from IFT. He founded People Connect, a mid and senior level search and selection company in 2003. Over the past 21 years, the firm has worked on several mid and senior and CXO level recruitment mandates for some of the most recognized brands globally. And we'll pick up Sarjeev on these brands also, right? With good quotes and case studies around the same. Prior to establishing People Connect, Sarjeev worked with organizations such as EXL Services and KSA Technopack, now Accenture. He was also the country head of a UK-based executive search firm by the name of Nicholson International. Sarjeev works with professionals at middle and senior level on career curation and coaching. He also does career counseling and coaching for fresh graduates pro bono. I hope the 24-26 batch is listening to this, right? And I think we have a huge audience from that segment today. So welcome to the 26 batch as well. Sajeev, my first question to you would be, right, we've been posting a lot of these articles on the career community as well, which relates to the unemployment rate being at 9.2%, which is almost statistically speaking the highest in over a decade. And you, of course, keep hearing a lot of stories of IITians and IIMs and other premier engineering and MBA institutes not getting placed on campus. The average median salary is also getting affected. Probably they've got halved over a period of time. There are stories of layoffs across the consulting sector. Bain was, I think, one very recent story which I read a couple of days back. So, given the experience which you have and the visibility which is available to you across sectors, would you be kind enough to spend some time telling us as to what is actually happening across? Is this actually a systemic unemployment story? Are we entering a recession, or there are enough opportunities around, or probably we're not targeting them enough or properly? Over to you, sir.
So thanks, Amit, for that introduction. And one does read about in the news that there are layoffs that are happening, so the organizations are right-sizing, and it is typically the news that is coming is that it is across sectors, right? Yeah. Now, the only thing that is there, which I could tell people first of all, is that if an organization is right-sizing and your role gets impacted.
Yes.
First of all, is that don't start looking inwards in terms of what did I do wrong, right?
Yeah.
It could never be related to your skills or your competence. It could be purely related to an organizational fact. Sometimes, interestingly, what we used to run an outplacement firm, right?
Okay.
But decided to close it because we found it ethically not commensurate with our values. Because we used to charge companies to coach people when they were laid off, right?
Okay.
This was almost a 2-month engagement, and we used to do complete stuff in terms of building their resumes, looking at their social media network. We used to have these competency-based coaches who used to evaluate them, write a report which ran into 8-9 pages on competencies. But we decided to close down in the sense that we found that it was not a very right way of making money. Although it was very profitable, but we thought that that's not the right way. But
Rajiv, this was in India? This was in India?
Or was it in the company was way to the top, and we worked with, for confidentiality reasons, I can't name the names.
That's fine.
These are the biggest brand names you'll ever encounter.
Okay.
So it is not something which is, just to answer your question, I mean, when you said systemic unemployment, I don't think so this is related to that part, because unemployment is a creation of the policies which the government is following or the organizations are following from time to time, right? A lot of layoffs which we see now are more a result of the fact that organizations went on overdrive of hiring during the COVID. Post COVID, every organization was hiring double numbers, right?
Okay.
And we see a reflection in their results also. So if you look at the consumer spending, that is on a decline, right?
Okay.
And the way I look at it is the consumer spending is the first thing that will impact our employment rates,
Okay.
because uh, there was an article recently which talks about the fact that the electronic sector, which is on a PLI in India, uh, that is not being able to create so much of employment because most of that is automated.
Correct.
So one thing we need to understand of the economy and the employment situation is that this would be something which will continue over a period of time. It is not going away anywhere. So the elephant in the room will remain.
Right.
And my advice to people when I'm coaching them or helping them tide over this is that you need to go back to your first principle approach, right? Which is if your job has impacted, first of all, as I said, stop looking inwards in terms of why did it happen to me. The first response is that uh, why did my role get impacted where my colleague is still working or for whatever reason.
Yeah.
There could be multiple reasons. So the first thing that I tell people is what has happened. Start looking ahead, right?
Okay.
And that's the first advice I give to people. So when you start looking ahead, now, obviously, the question that comes to people's mind is, okay, what do I do to look ahead? Correct?
Yeah.
Now, what I recommend to them is, first of all, go back to your basics in terms of look at your resumes, because most of the time, what happens is people have a standardized resume which they don't customize for every job, right?
Right.
Which means that their chances of shortlisting are very minimal. And I'll tell you why. Because most of the search engines today, or the job dashboards, whether it is LinkedIn, whether it is Naukri or XYZ, they use a query based algorithm. So all the keywords that you mention in your resume becomes a query. So as a
Right.
recruiter, if I'm putting in a certain query and your resume is not showing, you
Yeah.
need to go back to the basics that if I'm customizing my resume for a particular job,
Yeah.
am I really doing it? And this is replicated in the application tracking system that the organizations also use.
Right.
Because you can't customize 100 resumes on Naukri. But
Yeah.
when you're applying to an organization, whether you're applying through a consultant, you do receive a job description. Whether you apply through a career site, you do have the job description. And the first thing I tell people is ensure that you spend time in customizing your resume.
Right.
If you're really not doing that, probably you're missing out on a big opportunity.
Right.
The second thing I tell people is, and I'm talking about the professional aspect first, and then I'll move to the personal
Sure.
aspect if that's
Sure.
okay. And you can interrupt me and ask me any questions, or anybody can ask questions, even during my conversation. That's fine with me.
All right.
So, so the resume building is the first part that you need to do. The second part is your LinkedIn getting updated? Because most of the people would go and update their resume on Naukri, but they would leave their LinkedIn completely untouched, thinking that it does not matter.
Right.
More than 80% of the hiring today happens through LinkedIn.
Wow. That's a huge insight. Yeah.
Because that has become a very critical media of recruitment. And that is why, if you look at LinkedIn today, LinkedIn is also coming up with a lot of tools which enable people to get the right kind of opportunity.
That's right.
So that's the second thing we do. So ensure that your resume is in place, which is customizable. Second is ensure your social media profile is getting built. The third thing we tell people is that you should start ensuring that you're posting something on LinkedIn which is relevant to your industry. It's very difficult for you to write articles or to share a thought, especially when you're not in that state of mind. Because the first thing happens when people's role get impacted is how would they manage the finances over a period of time, right?
True. Survival is the first thing which kicks in.
Survival is the first thing, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we tell people to do these three things first. And the other thing we ask them to typically do is work with a mentor, work with a coach, work with anybody they feel on building their interviewing skill capability. And the reason for that is that once your role gets impacted, your confidence level gets shaken up.
Right.
You start feeling because there is a fear in terms of how long would you be on the path to getting a ideal opportunity. The fourth thing, which is very important, which I tell people is, don't get fixated on the compensation that your new employer will give you. right?
Hmm.
People get fixated that I used to get X
X.
and I get 50% of the 0.50 of that X today.
Correct.
That's not a very wise way of looking at your career. I always tell people building a career is like a marathon, it's not a 100-meter race.
No.
Right? You want to build a career over a period of time. You can't build your career overnight and think that I will be the CEO of 5 years if I miss the bus, if my role has got impacted, I'll miss it. A lot of youngsters want to be CEOs by the time they're 25, 26, which is a big surprise, when somebody like me has gray hair. I mean, fine, you have CEOs, I mean, professional CEOs are 35, 36.
Right.
25, 26 is either you are a startup or it's your own
Shop.
parental company per se that you've built, right?
Right.
So these are the four or five things that I typically tell people to build as their repertoire of getting over this curve of a situation where your role has unfortunately got impacted.
Okay.
So that is what I tell people. If you have questions, happy to answer them, and then I'll move to other aspects.
A forum we can parallelly ask questions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Aditya, you can open the queue. Sarjeev is okay to answer questions
So
as we
I'll
go
do
along.
one thing, Samir. I'll do one thing, Samir, to make it a little more relevant. There is a advice that I give people
Sure.
on the personal aspect. So if you want, we can cover it now, or we can cover it later.
We can cover it now, please, and then we can parallelly take questions, and then it therefore becomes an interactive session, right? Instead of
Absolutely, that's the intent.
just yeah. I think that'll be much better. So first your personal advice, and then I'll request you to open the queue for questions, please. Let's interact. That's fine. I think that's a
So
better format.
so my suggestion on your personal attitude and behavior during this point is first of all, try and get off social media. I know it is very very kind of addictive, but there were times in my life, uh, and I'll take a 30-second thing about my life story. So when I started People Connect, I had returned from the US. So I started another organization with another ex-colleague of mine, and we had the fanciest office in the fanciest location in Delhi. But I invested all my money, and then we didn't decide to carry on that partnership for whatever reasons. And when I left that company, I was almost bankrupt.
Oh,
I was bankrupt. My wife was in the family way, and we were expecting our first child. We had installments to pay, and I had just about
oh,
enough money to ensure my wife's normal delivery, not even a C-sec delivery.
he's
so, so that was the situation, and it's a reality. And so this was 2003, and you've got a kid on the way, you don't have money in the bank, and your mother has just taken a voluntary retirement. So whatever could go wrong went wrong. so, so
Ah,
during that time, I was on Facebook, and I realized that that was causing me a lot of inertia in my mind because everybody's life seemed rocking there, right? And trust me, from that day till now, I just got off social media. I don't go to Facebook at all because of the simple thing that everybody's life is rocking. Obviously, now I have the wherewithal to manage that mentally, but at that instant, it was very difficult. So, first of all,
Understood.
get off social media, okay, and seek mentorship. Now, mentorship can come from anywhere. It
Yeah.
could come from a family member, it could come from a
True.
friend, it could come from an alumni, it could come from anyone who's available. And there are a lot of people on LinkedIn who do not mind hand holding you through this process.
And that's a pro bono process. I mean,
That's a pro bono process. People don't charge you for it. Obviously, you have to understand and appreciate that whoever is giving you a pro bono advice, they're not only doing pro bono, they can do pro bono because obviously they have other
true.
commitment which
Very true.
allows them to do pro bono.
Absolutely.
And try and avoid reading too much of negative news.
Hmm. Hmm.
If I simple example is every second day some journalist picks up a cord on how the IT sector is laying off people.
Very true, sir. सब तरफ वही है. देखिए IT सेक्टर में क्या हो रहा है.
Okay, so we're talking about 27,000 people getting laid off in the month of August. That's the latest statistics, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, remember, those 27,000 people might not be even reading that. They might have even got unemployment. That could be just a journalist figment of numbers, So don't
Yeah.
trust numbers. At the end of the
Or
day,
a catchy news just to
catchy news.
get more
So,
subscribers to read. Yeah.
absolutely. So, a lot of candidates ask me at times because I tend to brief my candidates before interviews, and that really helps them. A lot of candidates ask me, okay, how many candidates have you presented or how many are in the final phase? So I tell them one simple thing, and they don't like it. Sometimes I'm rude and curt. I said, at the end of the day, remember you're running the race alone. Even if you're running with 10 people, how does your chance improve?
Yeah,
Even if you're
very
running
true.
with 2 people, how do your chance improve?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So don't think about 27,000 people getting laid off.
Hmm,
You just that want that one job, right?
hmm.
And the more you are focused on that, getting that one possible job, you will get it. Trust me.
Sure, sure.
I have candidates through the outplacement process who ended up getting 5 opportunities in a manner of time if they followed the process that we've told them, and
Wow,
they picked and
wow,
chosen, right?
wow.
So,
Superb, superb.
so
Yeah,
things
sorry.
would never last. Trust me.
Yeah.
It is just a phase in your life, and you'll bounce back.
Hmm.
The third thing is whatever your habits are, or whatever, if you follow a sport, if you read, don't give up on that. So, in effect, don't give up on your me time. Your me
Okay.
time is critical.
Yeah.
You tend to spend too much and avoid getting on the phone all the time. At the end of the day, that might also take time away. If you want to focus on rebuilding your profile, rebuilding yourself. And how do you rebuild yourself? You rebuild yourself. So a lot of tools that are available free of cost. If people
Yeah.
tell me today that they are limited by the fact that they don't have learning opportunities, I'm very surprised. Forget the edtech companies of the world. There is so much of content available which you can build up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially about your industry.
Hmm.
Today, whether you are part of HR, finance, marketing, or any other activity, a lot of companies want your skill set on Python. They want your
Yeah.
ability to look at data and analyze it,
Yeah.
which a lot of youngsters are avoiding.
Yeah.
So most of the opportunities we get today, and especially when they're recruiting young talent or early stage talent, they simply tell us that ensure that the person has some understanding of analytics. They should be at least able to code in analytics, the basic code, and that is not difficult,
Right. Right.
right? So that is the other thing. So I think I've covered this particular thing. And also, whatever you do, just follow that one habit. If you pray, please ensure that you continue to pray. That will give you strength. If you chant, whatever you chant,
Yeah.
meditate. So do something which ensures that your inner reservoir of resilience keeps getting built up.
Yeah.
Because most often what happens is it's our inner reservoir that keeps getting depleted. And that will also shape up in the response when you go for an interview. An interviewer is very quick to understand that what is your confidence level.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, which I always tell people, prepare for interviews. Most of the people go to interviews thinking that, Arey yaar, ye to roj ka kaam hai.
Hmm.
It is not roj ka kaam.
True.
Remember, the candidate who gets the job has worked hard on it.
Yeah.
That could be anything. That could be preparation for your basic questions. That could be preparation for your questions related to your career. For example, standard questions are already available, right?
Yeah.
Ensure that your answers are short and sweet. There is something called an elevator pitch approach, which we recommend to our candidates, which is define the problem statement which you had, what is the action or the initiatives that you took, and what was the impact that you created. People want to know this.
Yeah.
Organizations look at problem solvers, and those are situations you should preempt and think before you go for an interview.
Very
So
true.
those are some things that I think people can do on a personal level.
Sure. So,
Now
as
we
you,
can open the door for
yeah,
questions.
as you very correctly mentioned, just to quickly summarize, there are more than enough free tools which are already available on YouTube, on ChatGPT, and so on and so forth, which can be utilized to continuously learn on new skills and imbibe knowledge. At the same time, pray or do whatever you can. Ensure your me time. Keep your reservoir energy, or keep your energy up and your reservoir up. And thirdly, whenever the call comes for an interview, please go extremely well prepared with absolute seriousness to knock it. And as Sarjeev said, even during the outplacements, I mean, that's a very good example. Within 2 to 3 months, people landing 4 to 5 opportunities is humongous, right? And obviously, you just need one job. You need to pick up only one out of those 5 opportunities. So, therefore, there is a lot of meat which is available there. and opportunities as well. Aditya, if you could just open the queue and we could take up the first question, we we'll make it interactive as we go along. Thank you so much. Sanat, please go on. I'll put myself on mute.
Okay, thank you for the talk. So I wanted to understand the median salaries. Do you see in the market that the median salaries have adjusted downwards? And if they have adjusted downwards, in which sector it has happened the most?
So when you ask me median salaries per se, we have this theory which I have because I spent almost 30 years in this business. So we always say people from the top tier institutes typically after they've crossed 5 years, they typically make a minimum of 5 lakhs for every year of experience. That's your tier one. Tier two would drop to about three. And obviously, we do not recruit much from tier three colleges, so I can't reflect on that. But the median salaries per se, I don't think so have dropped, but salaries over the last 2, 3 years have stabilized. And there are companies which are big multinationals. They have frozen their compensation where they're not giving people any increase. They are linking it more to performance. So, which is a trend which we see in mature markets like Europe and US, where compensations really don't grow at the rate that they grow in India. Because in India, if you change your job, you anticipate an increase of 25 to 30%, right? But in the US, etc., if you change your job, it could be a parallel move, maybe a 5-10% increase over your base salary. They will not go much overboard because the larger part of your compensation comes from your performance. It is not linked to the basics that you're supposed to do.
Okay, but there have been no downward adjustment in any sector. They have just been freezed, say for the last this year maybe or the last year, based on which base year. So when I say base year, suppose 2024, is it now the 2023 base which has now been fixed? It's not increasing.
I would honestly, I do not have enough data to really respond to that, but basis and one standard disclaimer here is this is not a reflection of any of the companies that we recruit for. And this is purely my personal view, it's not my professional view. And this is not a reflection of any of our clients, okay? But if you ask me, because we do not recruit for the e-commerce sector, I can go ahead and really put my neck out there. So the e-commerce has frozen salaries. Typically, most of the companies have pegged their salaries to 2022. Does that answer your question, Sanat?
Yeah. So base is 2022, and the increment is not happening because of what reasons?
You know, everybody feels that they deserve an increase of 10-15% year on year, which is a myth that we've created over a period of time. We have to understand that when we started this increases of 30-40% when you shift jobs, or when we every year there is a 10-15% appraisal. This is purely an India concept, or rather an Asian concept, if I were to call it. Uh, because when we started, there was a huge disparity of what the cost arbitrage was available between the Western world and the Indian world. Today, the salaries in India probably would be 60% of what 60-70% of what a person would get in the US, right? When we started, probably we were 10-15% of what we were in the US. So obviously that gap is getting bridged. And if that gap keeps getting bridged, you will gradually move to the same method they follow there. Because a lot of companies that are in India, which are there, are hiring today, are the Western economy countries, and they would also, Western economy companies, they would also feel that they follow a particular trend in their market. So why can't they start reflecting it in India? And that is what is happening, especially in the e-commerce sector. They are becoming cost conscious. And in an e-commerce sector, a lot of services-based business, the human resource is the biggest cost.
So you say,
And if you're not, sorry, and if your top line is not growing, how do you ensure that your bottom line is conserved? It's simple business theory. You can only conserve your bottom line by ensuring that if your top line is not growing, by reducing expense. And what is the most visible expense? People.
employees, obviously. If
So
that's the
that's
largest portion of the cost, then obviously there you will see that.
absolutely. So that is what is happening, which people don't realize. I mean, people want multiple increases. You have to be realistic. You've got a job, you're not getting an increase. I'll be very happy.
Yeah, at least you have a job.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had situations where during COVID, we went back to our employees and said that, listen, we cannot continue to afford to pay you what we're paying you. But yeah, we almost increased the incentives by 200%, which means if you're making money, you make money. Isn't
Right.
that simple?
Yeah,
Which is
yeah,
fair enough. Which is fair enough, right? As long as you're making money and contributing, you'll get a pie of it and
And
continue.
and trust me, when we reversed this, once the situation improved, my employees said that, listen, why can't we go back to that? Because they were making more money.
agreed, agreed. So you're saying that now this is so. Is it also happening because there is the availability has increased? So number of people joining the workforce has increased, and because of that increase, the salaries have not gone up. Okay. On the demand side, you see revenue not growing of the companies that were hiring at a pace which they were growing earlier. But at the same time, in India, because of the labor supply increase, uh, the salaries have impacted.
I would not say that the labor supply has increased or anything that, I mean, I don't want to draw economics into it because that is always there. You'll always have the demand and supply. But I would say that what is really impacting the current situation in India is the fact that companies went overboard on hiring during post COVID because everybody was revenge spending. Everybody thought that the market would grow at that humongous race. The CAGR grew the way it had never grown earlier, and they thought that this trend will continue. But now that the trend has reversed, obviously they are downsizing or right sizing. The second thing which is going to impact certain sectors, because that is what Samir asked me initially. I see sectors like fintech, banking, and I'm talking about services. Okay, I'm not talking about manufacturing. Uh, uh, lot of other sectors which are purely reliant on technology, they will continue to right size because I was reading an article which said that, and I would not quote the company. It said that they've saved some 5,700 manas of developer cost in a matter of 1 month because they're using some AI enabled Copilot.
Okay, so do you see? I'm sorry.
Sus-
Banking is another sector. If you notice, banking is going down because if you look at the branches earlier, the
Yeah.
branches are becoming skeletal now. Earlier branches had 25, 30 people. My mother is a banker,
Okay.
as I told earlier. The branch used to be like 5,000 square feet with at least 30 people. Now you go to a branch, you will not find more than 5, 6 people. How many people on this site would go to a last visited a bank to
I
physically do a banking transaction?
I haven't seen a branch in the last 3 years. Internet
So
banking, app, mobile.
there you go. So that is what is happening. That is why I constantly tell youngsters. My son is 21, by the way, so I always keep telling him also the same thing that you need to build a skill, which is irreplaceable. You need to build a skill which is streets. You're being street smart. Your awareness level needs to go about up. How you can solve problems and what you can contribute to the organization
Yeah,
goes up. So I always tell people what your value creating should go up to an organization. If you're not creating value, the organization would find somebody who would be creating value.
absolutely. Very well said. I think that underlines everything. Sanat, if this is over, can we just move to the next person because we have a huge queue of questions now.
Yeah, 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 because I will never end. So mine will never end. So
And then
never
you can
mind.
come back again, please, Sanat.
Yeah, yeah, no problem, no problem, no
Thank you
problem.
so much.
Thanks, Anand.
Thanks very much.
Aditya, if we can take the next person, please.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. My name is Dhirendra. I am 2014 batch, and really, your experience is very valuable. And really, basically, the way you basically mention need some mentor to basically come back the moment the situation, this is wrong situation. So I have just tried to understand after the pandemic and geopolitical issue, and now this information is basically available on fingertips, and the moment I am a GenAI certified, AI certified, and every industry now is looking like a Python analytics and AI, how AI will be going to transform this entire industry, and how fintech will be going to basically engage and impacted basically another industry. So I just try to understand like a Germany, like a Saudi Arabia, they are just embarking on this digital transformation journey. So how you feel this resource gap will be basically India have a lot of skill and lot of innovation and lot of that infrastructure, digital infrastructure is already there. So how this is going to basically impact in this type of basically country?
So I'll just repeat what I understood, Dhirender.
Yeah,
Your question is more directed towards the fact that how AI or the digital part, which is already so strong in India, would impact the Middle East and Germany. Is that correct? Have I understood your question correctly?
correct.
So, honestly, this is not something that I have the professional competence to answer because I don't work in those two markets, right? But let me try and answer that question in the best possible ability that I could. Uh, so, Middle East has always been a big employer of talent which are related to tech. Earlier, it has transitioned now. There was a lot of talent which went into oil and gas, infrastructure, construction, and possibly, yeah, there could be demand in those economies, especially for the skills that you mentioned. I don't really have a view on Germany, so it'll be very unfair on me to comment. I'm sorry, was I able to answer your question, Dhirender?
Yes,
No,
I
no. Saji, your caution is very right way. But I was visited Frankfurt, Germany in month of January, and in fact, I was there in Riyadh also. But at the moment, basically, Indian people are very hard work and very learning. But there, people are very because economic people are getting the job very easy. They are very comfortable, and where basically this geopolitical because now is the not technology, now is a people trade is going on. So after this basically pandemic, lot of basically work from home and lot of work basically they are getting basically as a startup, they are basically create a value to this industry. So that's
Yeah, as I said, the demand will continue in any mature market which is transitioning. I really don't know about Germany, but Middle East, obviously, is always a consumer of talent that comes from India and the Western countries, depending
that's
upon what skill set you bring to the table.
yeah. Thank you, Dhirinder ji, and
yeah.
thank you,
Thank you,
Sajeev,
thank you, thank you.
for this interaction. Aditya, we can move to the next person, please.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for the session, sir.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding as a new graduate who has just started his MBA. As you rightly mentioned that the companies now look into the analytics part of the career ahead, and I can see there are a lot of information on plate and there are a lot of skills that I can learn. But with this amount of data and information in my hand, I am not able to segregate and prioritize. Can you help me in some insights how we can prioritize and what should we learn if like there is a sequence to what should we learn first and then go ahead?
So, Ashish, very relevant question. Uh, the only thing is that the way I look at it is that depends upon what field you want to choose. I went to IFT where people used to think that IFT is only for a marketing or a international trading specialization, and I have not spent a day doing that. All I've done is HR. So, had somebody asked me that question in terms of what is the skill, it depends upon what path you want to pursue. For example, if you want to do marketing, now marketing is such a key element of marketing analytics, because if I look at marketing as a subject, there is a market research, there is a brand, there is a product launch, there is a lot of analytics that you need to do in terms of uh, how the entire customer journey is going to shape up. There is product life cycle, there is cost product. So I don't want to get into the Kotler stuff. Now, going back to the basics, as I always say, my biggest phrase which I love in life is go back to the first principles. The first principle approach is go back to the basics. So if you want to pursue a career in marketing, maybe you should be able to draw data from your consumer using analytics and look at a basic trend, right? And when people tell me that they've learned coding, that is not what companies are looking at. Most of the companies which hire people who understand Python and analytics, they will give them an assignment to do that, and they would evaluate you basis the result of that assignment. So if you want to pursue, let's say, a career in international trade, right? And I don't know, could you give me a specific example? I'll make it easier for me to answer this question. What field do you want to really pursue?
So actually, I was
Any
thinking in
thoughts?
finance, and as a fresh MBA graduate, and obviously tag of IIFT, there's a lot of expectation around this guy must have some kind of idea around these things. So, in perspective of finance, how we can go ahead?
So finance, and today the financial sector is seeing a lot of growth in the fintech space, correct? Now, coming to that particular area, now fintech typically works in a lot of consumer data. For example, there could be fintechs today fund, for example, a lot of mobile phones, which they give soft loans. So that is unsecured credit that they give. Plus, there is a lot of lending to MSMEs and SMEs. Primarily, again, there is no collateral loan, so it's unsecured loan. So if I were you, what I would recommend to you would be that perhaps look at any skill. First of all, is that I always tell people things like Python are that should be your fundamental basic foundation on technology today. The sooner you grasp it is the better. You don't know AI, that's fine. That's a different animal altogether. Nobody wants you to build algorithms using NLP and all of that, right? Because that particular field is growing so fast that it's impossible to keep pace with it, correct? Unless you want to build a career there. So since you want to, let's say, if you look at finance, the finance would open doors in fintech, banking, insurance, etc. But all of this would rely on some form of data. Now, even if you're, for example, not being asked by your own company to do something on the analytics side, you're just pursuing a normal finance ring where you're responsible, let's assume, for building business. But if you run analytics, you will know what sectors are growing for you. Where do you want to invest more time in building? And you can always present that model to your superior. So a person who comes without any data to me or just gives me raw data versus person who comes to me with analyzed data and gives me trends. If I'm a boss, I would prefer the guy who gives me trends. He solved my problem. And that's what I said. What value are you creating? So go back to that.
Very true. Very true.
So everybody is doing a job. But if somebody has a no, I'm sure we all started. We had bosses. Some of our bosses used to love us, and when I remember my bosses loving me was when I never took a problem to them. I just took a solution to them.
Sir, अभी भी वही rule चलता
So
है. That is a universal rule, and I think it is perpetual across
so
time zones.
people like people who can solve problems. People don't like people
Yeah.
who can bring problems. So to answer your question, maybe just to start by doing something, and you will find your journey. The first step I can tell you as a foundation is do something in Python, R. That's the first thing I tell people. I might be wrong, but that is a trend I see. So do that, and then once you start getting there, you start discovering a path. No, nobody can predict and say that. Listen, I'm not a soothsayer. I can do this. No, I don't have that skill, unfortunately. So Ashish, I hope I'm able to answer your question, but do Python and everything if you want to do, and
Surely, sir.
you can come back to me and I'll probably guide you.
Honestly, sir,
Thank you, Ashish.
actually, I have completed Python and I also took up some project on analytics. Thank you, sir, for anyways answering my
Great,
question.
Ashish. Great for you. Thank
So
you.
you already doing what I've been telling people to do. So you're a smart guy, yeah.
You're on the right path and you'll achieve great
Brilliant.
heights. Brilliant.
More people like you should do that then.
Yeah, yeah. Aditya, can we move to the next person on the queue, please? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Ani. So, I request to you, can you just flash a light over the people who having a mid of their career and age-wise as well? Just like what I mean by that, that is what at this moment, people who start their career in a 15 or 20 year back, and now they are in a 40s and a 45 somewhere, and they are hierarchy level. They may be the vice president, director somewhere in engineering department. So period of time as I am talking with them and they are coming, interacting with me for this is a very difficult time. So how they guys, if somebody lost their job as a VP of engineering, VP of finance, and how they move forward from here, even though they have all the skill set, just like a programming and a finance and in all kind of things.
Sajiv, I think that's a very good question. It also
Very good
brings us
question.
back to the core of the topic which we were supposed to discuss today. What do you do in a situation when you are 20 years, 10 to 20 years of experience, you're a mid-level professional, and you get laid off, right? What is going to be your next move? And it's going to be Sajiv. This is where I am going to pick you to give us a 360-degree perspective, covering both personal and professional aspects, as you did earlier. Thank you. Over to you.
Great. So I'll cover the professional aspect first, Manjeet. Uh, Now, obviously, your 15, 20 years experience, your role gets impacted. Let's say, assuming your role got impacted because of automation, because these days robotics is passe. Now you have certain companies which are manufacturing much high-end work in automating full factories where everything is automated. You don't see a single person except if something breaks down, you see a human being. Otherwise, everything is automated. So if the person's role is getting impacted who has 15 to 20 years experience, you know, you have to first understand that you might be working with, let's say, one of the top multinationals, correct? Now, is the pace of automation similar across all the sectors and across all companies? Are Indian companies also automating at the same pace? The answer is no. There is always going to be companies which are going to be not so capital rich that they could automate their processes. But you have skills which you learned with an MNC, which you can migrate to an Indian company or a smaller company. For example, if you look at the landscape of India today, and coming back to the question that Samir asked me, which sectors are growing? If I look at the sectors that are growing today, infrastructure is growing. And you have very small companies which are feeding into some of the large organizations from a OEM perspective or from some other bases that they're building. It's not that if today a Jupiter Wagons or a Titagarh, which is manufacturing, which is, by the way, those stocks have really gone up, and those companies are doing very well because they're doing a lot of development in the railway sector today. But there is always a company like Wheels India. Now, what does Wheels India do? Wheels India manufactures the wheels. So most of these companies are not fully integrated in the manufacturing chain. They always are reliant on something else which they need to build their final product. Correct? Now, if somebody with 15 years, their role gets impacted, I would recommend them to probably look at some of the smaller organizations or some of the companies which are not like MNCs or otherwise, which are automated, and search opportunities there. Now, obviously, you can counter it saying that could take time. So yeah, sometimes things could take time. I would not really predict how much time it will take, but at least reach out to the thing. Most of the time when we get people from some large brands, Indian brands or large MNCs, the first reaction is they want to go back to similar culture. So I would really say that when you're looking for a job, and this is a recommendation to everybody, please don't go with self biases. The moment you get biased, your ability to get a job might be tougher. And we let a lot of biases creep in. Yeah, I worked in an MNC. I had 15 people reporting to me. I had 10. I had two executive assistants. That doesn't work in the real time. Yeah, I mean, I'll quote another story which I'll give because there's another journey of my life which I'll share with people. But you know, That is what you need to do, Manjeet. And the second thing is have a plan B. For example, if you've got engineering skills, there are a lot of small startups which you can link up and help them on a consulting basis. Till you get a full time employment, consulting is a very good opportunity. And a lot of people think that it's an entrepreneurship that they're doing. No, you're not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is setting up a whole company. You are just an individual who wants to do freelancing. And there are sites, for example, a lot of people in India are not aware. There is a site called Flexing It. Similarly, there are other sites which give you gig-based projects. So everybody thinks that projects are only for technology people. No, there are people looking for financial projects. There are people looking for a lot of other stuff. Plus, there are a lot of companies that don't want. They might want a co-founder whom they don't want to get, who they can't pay, but they'll give you equity or maybe a small salary to cover your cost. That's another good opportunity that you can look at. So, once we start exploring, there could be endless doors that will open, provided we get off our biases. So, I'll tell you a small story of my life. In 2013,
Please,
I
please.
almost went bankrupt again. And 2013 was the
That's
recessionary year.
within 10 years, huh?
Within 10 years. So, 2013 was a recessionary year. And I exactly remember I was almost like 40 something then. And I thought that I'd quit my job. I'd quit my job. I'm not quitting my job. I closed my business and I would go back and seek employment. So I went to this big headhunting firm, and that's where my bias creeped in. And everything went away. They made an offer. Obviously, the offer was much less than what I was making in my business. I asked them what is the flexibility they have. They said every morning you have to punch it at 9:30. So I said, boss, I went to one of my close friends who's my mentor also. He knows me for 20 years. And I went to him. I said, boss, kya karna chahiye? So he said, if you can run your business for 6 months, don't worry about it. So I said, ठीक है, 6 months का cost तो है, खींचेंगे. We did it for 6 months. And, we still have now run it for another 10, 11 years. And at that point in time, one day I remember I was coming back home and I lived in this condominium with a lot of basement parking. And I saw my car cleaner who charges 500 rupees per car. And I told my wife, अगर कुछ नहीं हुआ तो गाड़ियां साफ कर लेंगे. Actual story, I'm not making it up. Look at it, that guy cleans 200 cars in a day. $500 means 1 lakh rupees a day, 1 lakh rupees a month. That's enough for a family of 3 to survive.
Sir, chai wala bhi, as Moti ji says.
No,
Pakode
that
tallo.
is what I'm saying.
That's
we have
what
a
he's
lot of,
saying. It's an attitude. Yeah, do anything.
No, when you start thinking that I am willing to do anything, you will not go hungry. That's what I believe. I mean, I'm sorry I might be sounding emotional, etc., because my journey in life is a little different. So that's a separate thing. But you have to think out of the box what you can do. You have to think what skills you have.
But Sarjeev, that reflects, it's a very good example. And I would like to summarize it as follows. If one is faced with a dilemma like yours, or it could be a dilemma for anyone at any aspect of life, but you've been kind enough to spell it out. There are two ways to look at it. One is, of course, a fixed mindset. नहीं यार मेरे को वही करना है, 2 executive assistant, वो manufacturing, वो गाड़ी और वो सब चाहिए. And the other is a growth mindset, saying कि ठीक है, let me be flexible. I'll do these plus minus things. I'll do probably freelancing plus minus. There are plenty of opportunities, and I'll make my money, and I'll keep moving on. I think that's how
You've summed it very well. Just to add to that, if you look at a small example is a lot of startups. A lot of startups repivot. They start with something else, they end up something else, right?
Absolutely.
Their journey is also like that. So your career is also like a startup. Right? Treat it like one. If you're not repivoting or reskilling yourself, it'll become difficult for you because you have to understand the scenario. Everybody, our parents joined one company and left one company. We used to join one company, work for 5 years, then move to another 5 years. Now you have people changing jobs every 2-3 years. And work from home, COVID was a big game changer in terms of people's choice of careers. Work from home became one of the biggest things that people wanted, even if they were getting paid less. So, when the job market is transforming, you have to transform with it, is what my suggestion would be.
I recently heard, and it was in the news also, the owner of LinkedIn, the person who actually started LinkedIn, has forecasted, right? And of course, from his level, of course, if he's forecasting, there would be a lot of validation to it because he has a huge perspective and visibility. And he says 10 years down the line, by 34, the formal structured 9 to 5 job market would actually disappear. The gig economy, as you said very clearly, is the one which is emerging to a very large extent. If not fully, there would be a 50 to 60% of the market would be the gig economy, and so therefore the employment would also be in correlation to that. 50% of us might be involved in the gig economy by then, right, which offers flexible time and so on and so forth, as you very clearly mentioned. And coming from him, right, who knows, this prophecy might, he can see the trend coming in the next 10 years down the line. I'm sure probably this would be the future for all of us, so we should be prepared, as you very correctly voiced and said, right? And before we take the next question, there are two questions which I'd like to engage Sajeev here. One, of course, which are the sectors which you're seeing from a skill perspective, from a hiring perspective, evolving, right? Hearing these huge stories of GCCs being built in India as back offices. Is GCCs emerging as a big sector? What are the hiring trends? Which are the sectors which are really hiring? Which are the sectors which you see in the next 1 or 2 years slowing down in terms of hiring? And then I have another question before I will go back to the queue.
So to answer your question, and Samir, I really value your observation, and that's a great observation. GCCs are growing in India, and GCCs will continue to grow in India. GCCs are at the same flexion point what BPOs or call centers were in early 2000 or late 90s, right? We became almost a call center of the world, and now we are becoming the knowledge center of the world. And that is one sector that I ask a lot of youths to target because that'll give you easily a career runway of 10 to 15 years.
Super.
That is one sector that will grow. The other sector, which specifically for IFTNs, is look at the electronic components, look at the automotive components, look at the railway infrastructure, look at defense. Defense is not only about the PSUs. There are a lot of companies in the defense sector which are doing some amazing work, right? They are going to really start exporting a lot of stuff out of India, and those should be a target audience. The problem is that everybody wants to get hired by HUL, PNG, and some of the top FMCG companies, and people are just ignoring this particular uh, sector in the economy, which is growing at a much faster pace, both in terms of their top line as well as the people required, the resource requirement. Please focus on those sectors. Those sectors are bound to grow because if you look at India's, and I don't know how many of you, and since you are part of the IFT now and some of you have just graduated, how many of you analyze the export basket of an India and which sectors are growing exponentially over the last 3 years? That becomes our employment generators. You know, those are basics. As I said, first principles. If I'm looking for a job in the export market, which companies have shown a growth in the export, those become a possible target for me to seek employment. But you know, a lot of people do not want to really apply for jobs which require them to really stretch. And when I say stretch, it is not physical stretch, it is a mental stretch also. And that is what you need to focus on. Any job that stretches you mentally and physically from a long term basis will create more value for you tomorrow, not today. So, those are sectors that are growing. Railway infrastructure in India is growing in a big way. We are not targeting them. Chemical sector, which chemical sector obviously has grown, pharma has grown over the years. But traditionally, if you look at the focus of a lot of foreign trade students that are looking at pharma, they're looking at chemicals, they're looking at maybe OEMs, automotive OEMs, but people are not looking at the defense sector, for example, or electronic OEMs. For example, India has a huge PLI on electronics, right? And it is similar. So those sectors are employment generators. Are you looking at that? That's a question you need to ask yourself. Might not be very big brand names today, might not appear as very great on your resume today, But most of those companies are at an inflection point where they would really grow to a level where they can give you an employment for a lifetime. And if you join those companies, I cannot name my batchmates. There are some of my batchmates who quit as MDs and CEOs of some of the large multinationals, some of the large chemical companies, and they joined that company on campus and grew those companies and grew with them. So that's what you need to do from your own career thing. A company might be very small today, but do you have it in you to take it to a different level? So that's my thought. I don't know whether I overstretched my answer, but
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sajid, for that. Now, my next question is before I open the queue is what is the job search process is extremely unstructured, right? It's with a lot of areas of gray. If you've noticed the polls which we posted, over the last
yes,
1 month,
yes,
both trying to sense the mood and the number of people looking out for change, right? It's already 30% of the community which is already looking out for change. They have a job, they're looking out for job change. There is obviously a certain segment of the market which is unemployed. There are almost about 1% of the IFTNs who are unemployed because of various reasons, health reasons, and so on and so forth. And we see a significant vibe or mood reflection which says that the whole process of hunting for a job or searching for a job, as you may like it, is extremely tedious, very tough, non-responsive. It's like talking to a wall, non-responsive at all. We keep applying on LinkedIn, various job portals, talking to recruiters, and so on and so forth, but it is like hitting a wall. For months we do not hear back, we do not get any responses. It is extremely mentally fatiguing, physically as well, right? And so therefore it leads to a lot of areas wherein people get into these irrational fears, the blues as we call it, uh, mood swings, depressions, for lack of I don't want to use more negative words, but I hope you get my question, right?
yeah.
So uh, how does one put a plan, a roadmap to it? How does one structure the whole thing, right? What is the process which one builds around it? How does one stick to the process? And how does one keep oneself motivated through this process to ensure that discipline is followed, whatever needs to be done is done, instead of falling into depressive mood swings and not doing what is supposed to be done, because you need an immense amount of discipline and motivation to carry on with this process during these times. So it would be very helpful to get a elaborate answer for you from you on the whole structure, the roadmap or the blueprint one which needs to create for oneself, the process basically, and of course on the personal side, the modes which one needs to build in terms of on your finances, and also keeping the discipline and the motivation live so that one is able to stick to the process. Thank you, Sarjeev. Over to you.
It's a very lengthy question. I'll try and answer that. If I miss anything, Samir, please remind me. I'll try and answer that. I've
Please.
taken note of your question.
Thank you.
I'll try and answer them in parts. Now, the first part which you mentioned is that people apply for jobs and they don't hear back from either consultants or organizations. The challenge which I speak with a lot of recruiters and I myself know, you post one job, you'll get 10,000 resumes, right? Most of the people are applying for jobs randomly. They're not even looking at the fact that whether they have the skill set that matches their jobs. And that is desperation, right? Most of the companies works on ATS, which automatically will filter your resume out if you're not matching it. It's an automated process. So there is nobody else sitting on the other side who could tell you why your profile has not got shortlisted. The other thing is we get a lot of calls. When I say we, I'm talking about the recruitment community in general. We get a lot of calls from people saying that why didn't you shortlist my resume? I have the skill, or I'm willing to shift to another sector. Now you have to understand one small thing. When there is talent available in abundance, and I get a pick of people who are from the sector and are much more relevant, I would look at that particular talent pool. I would not look at any other talent pool because it's my professional competence also at stake, which people forget. I can't push a resume which is unrelated and get knocked off from the client because my professional competence is being questioned कि इनको तो recruit ही नहीं करना आता. Please understand, when we send as a recruiter, and I'm talking about even the recruiters within an organization, when they send resumes to the hiring manager and that resume is clutter, then their jobs are also at stake. Similarly, my relationship could be at stake with a client simply because I'm sending irrelevant resumes. So, are you really researching that job? So, one way is apply for lesser number of jobs and focus on those jobs. Second, most important aspect is try and reach somebody whom you know in that organization, but don't overstretch, right? If you start reaching multiple people in the same organization, they would feel कि यार ये बंदा desperate है, पांच लोगों के through try कर चुका है. That is what I said in the first thing. The first thing is network with an alumni who's in that organization. If you're on LinkedIn, you know what alumni works for those organizations. Write to them and say that, can you help me? Can you refer my resume instead of me sending it through LinkedIn? That helps. A personalized approach would always gain over a random approach. But before you reach out to that person, please do your homework that whether your resume even fits into that role. Otherwise, you would have lost that contact also. Next time you approach that person will say, yaar, waste of time hai banda. So, are you doing your own homework? Please ask yourself that question. Second thing is very important. Please maintain an Excel of the companies you're applying to. That should have the name of the company, the date when you sent your application, what was the job, the LinkedIn profile of the recruiter to whom you sent the job. It should be like a dashboard for your career journey. If you're not doing that, that's not the best way to look at a job. Please ensure that you're maintaining a dashboard of whom you're applying to. That will tell you your success conversion rate. You are in fact building your own analytics tool for future. How many companies did you apply to before you got a conversion, right? The second thing is always look at ways where you can do a gig or a small stint with 2-3 companies which are relevant to your sector. Companies look at people because a lot of companies are also looking at contractual employees. We get a lot of demand for people who want to do contractual based employment for 6 months to 1 year. Trust me, rather than sitting at home for 6 months, a 6 months contractual job is much better. A lot of people think, अरे यार मैं contractual कर रहा हूँ, मुझे दिक्कत होगी. कुछ नहीं होता है. A lot of people think that I've got laid off and I tell a recruiter I've got laid off, they're going to view my profile negatively. That used to happen maybe a decade ago. Now recruiters also understand that your role could get impacted and they have equal amount of empathy for you. In fact, a lot of organizations, I'll tell you, prefer people who can join them immediately because it leaves them hanging for 3 months and the candidate not showing up on the day. Runaway bride, that's what I call it, or runaway groom, whatever you want to call it, right? That's a very common concept in the recruitment world. We have runaway grooms and brides. Candidate जिस दिन शो अप करना है वहाँ कैंडिडेट कह रहा है मैं लिफ्ट में हूँ, एचआर टीम वेट कर रही है उसको इंडक्शन के लिए, लिफ्ट में पहुंचने में उसको पूरा दिन लग गया, शाम को कहता नहीं यार मैं गया, मुझे उनका ऑफिस अच्छा नहीं लगा तो मैं नहीं ज्वाइन कर रहा. Yeah, and we all know he's joined some other company. These are real stories.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is the second thing is maintain a dashboard. Third is apply for a relevant job. Customize your resumes. If possible, maybe prepare a cover letter that talks about what the skill sets you bring to the table and what is the value you're going to add. Always build value that you're going to create for the employer. Even in a cover letter, you can demonstrate that, right? I saw your organization is doing this. This is the role and this is the value I can add. But you can only add value if you know the sector. If you don't know the sector, you cannot add value. So those are the first thing. And I hope I've answered that question in terms of managing the thing.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Second thing is about your personal mind space, right? And I can draw an example only from my own personal journey, right? Now in 2003, when I became bankrupt, I didn't have any tools to. In fact, I didn't have the mental space to do anything. There was too less of a time and too high a performance remarks. So all I needed to do was just run with the ball and not even bother where I'm going. It's just like you have to do, right? Every day you have to wake up, you have to just push yourself. 2013, obviously, we were much more evolved. I had employees whom I needed to pay for, right? And I have been religious since childhood. But then I went to somebody, one of my friends told me about this Buddhism practice, which I embraced, right? And that was a career churning journey for me from that perspective, right? I embraced that practice in 2013, and every time, and obviously now I'm a regular there, but every time I used to feel a stage going down, I used to fall back on it. So you need to do something similar. You need to follow a prayer, a practice, meditation, a sport, whatever gives you pleasure. Keep aside those 30 minutes or 1 hour to pursue activities where your phone is left behind, where you're only giving it to yourself. Anything, any sport. It could be badminton, it could be just going for a walk. Because, if you stay in the house for longer, A, you're not meeting enough people. B, when you go out, you can meet people in the lift. You can meet neighbors, you can meet acquaintances, and that could also help in a job for you. If you're staying at home, nothing will happen. You go out for a sport, you go, and there are a lot
Very
of
true.
free
Very true.
there are free webinars that are happening. There are free events that are happening, and those don't cost you anything except for the cost of going there and coming there, smiling at people, networking. Fiki has event, Asokam has event, Chambers of Commerce has events. Are you making it a routine to go there? No, because we are just very, very blindsided to a lot of other things. It's like a blinkers on approach. We are unidirectional. So 360-degree approach, to take a phrase from Samir, would require you to operate on all areas. You just can't operate on one area. And what you should also do is, uh, because some of the youngsters might not have children, because I'm addressing them per se, spend time with a relative, friend, travel. Staying with a relative is free of cost. If your parents are not here, go and live with your parent. Being with a parent sometimes is very therapeutic. But tell them that not to ask questions कि तुम्हें नौकरी कब मिलेगी.
Aditya, I
Before you go
hope
to this,
you're listening to this.
set up a standard rule. Okay. So there are multiple things I can do. Pick up hobbies which you've left behind. You like painting. You know, ultimately, your mental being is owned by you yourself, right? And at the end of the day,
So that's a very good thing, Sarjeev. I was just talking to Aditya. He's an engineer from Bangalore and working for Amazon. He said, "Sir, before I joined IFT, मैं Amazon ने इतना पका दिया था मुझे Saturdays तो Sundays भी काम करा करा के कि एक महीने का मैंने break लिया. I went to my parents' place, stayed there, and then joined IFT." So that is a very good example and correlates with just what you said.
now very important. When we live in hostels, and my son now studies, and he lives in a hostel himself. He does everything himself now, right? Dishwashing, yeah, falana. And when he comes home, he knows there are people doesn't even have to get up for a glass of water, right? And there he's hustling for everything in life. So sometimes going to your parents is also very therapeutic. It relaxes you. Anyhow, so that was on a lighter note. But again, I'm glad, Aditya, you resonate with what I said. So I
So
hope I've answered one question
yeah,
which I forgot to answer, which is very important, guys,
please
and
do.
that's what I learned from my own journey of life. Um, you should inculcate a habit of saving right from your first salary. That is something you need to build. I was, it was very, I was reading the latest analytical meeting of one of the credit card companies, and they were saying that the debt now in tier 2, 3 cities is going up, which is scary. Why? Because we are living on buy today and pay later. And that is going to really harm the economy sooner than later. So, my suggestion to you is ensure that you are
True.
picking up savings. Anything you want to save, you don't worry about whether you're investing in the stock market, mutual fund, or fixed deposit or debt, but inculcate a habit of saving. That's very important. That's what I didn't do. But then 2003 taught me a very important lesson. Now, when 2023 comes and the sector is going down, I am not bothered. I'm like, okay, chalega, ho jayega. इस बार I have enough firepower.
Enough
But yeah,
gunpowder. Enough dry gunpowder.
yeah. So you have to build it over a period of time, is what I'm saying. Because Samir asked me about the finance part, and IFT. There is a group where there are enough people who are financial wizards. I see their posts, and some of them could advise you on how to. And that's a good session to have, Samir. Maybe you can
We
ask
will. We will.
maybe Gaurav or some other people to
That's
come on
right.
board and just inculcate that as a viewpoint, right?
Yes, I'm getting Gaurav to speak on financial planning very soon. It's going to be a next podcast. We'll send you an invite for the same as well.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Lovely to have you on there. Yeah. So, Aditya, back to you. If there are any questions, you can open the queue, and then yeah, because we're nearing 11 o'clock, 11 minutes to 11, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I have a couple of questions. One is on the banking technology and say the banking IT space. I would like to know what is the current trends in terms of leadership hiring, and the leadership hiring could be anywhere from head of business to head of product to some of the other CXO roles within an organization. It could be mid senior, it could be senior, depending on the organization. Yeah. So that's one question. The second thing is what I see is that there are a lot of while on LinkedIn we get to see lots and lots of posting in banking technology as well as other opportunities in mid senior or senior positions. And despite applying selectively for some of the jobs, including say basically customizing the resume to some extent and also attaching the no the kind of what is that opening letter etc. I mean there are hardly any response or no response typically, and many times the responses come after 2-3 months saying that no, we have gone through it but we found some internal candidates. So are these postings for real or are these just ghost posting? Because there's also a lot of this buzz that many of these postings are just for the sake of compliance, but there's always an internal candidate, and that's the way it works. It's working out for many of these senior positions. Yeah.
But answer your second question first, Paramjeet.
Yeah.
I think a week ago, Mint had an article, and the title was "Are Ghost Posts Spooking the Job Hunt for Indians?" And that's the title of the story. It's published by Mint. You can read
Okay.
it. It says, "Are Ghost Posts Spooking the Job Hunt for Indians?" So, a lot of stuff that is there, and that article talks about how a lot of companies are just putting in opportunities there, which might not be real opportunities. They're just building their own databases for a future employment. And you should read that article. To your point, right? I hope that talks about your ghost jobs, etc. And that
Yeah,
article
sure.
will answer your questions. I don't want to attempt it because it's a gray area, and I want to best avoid it because we do recruit in that space. So I have to keep my mouth zipped. But that's up to you to figure out. That article covers what I wanted to say. So coming to your question, now banking tech, banking IT, I don't know what organizations you are targeting, Paramji, but I always feel that you need to focus on companies which are smaller, mid-sized IT firms or smaller IT firms. The large IT firms in India, unfortunately, they're not getting the projects in the fintech space the way they used to get earlier. And that is because a lot of Indian companies do not have the wherewithal to apply the artificial intelligence to developing products which are going to change the scenario in the banking sector. I might be making a very blanket statement, but that kind of work is happening in startup area, and a lot of smaller companies are doing that. And they would keep looking for people who have an exposure to either sell that as a SaaS product or a PaaS product. I don't know. But if I were you, I would target those organizations. The big ticket large players, they are too layered per se to come up with enough opportunities because you specifically wanted a role in BD. For example, we are working with one company in Hyderabad, which is a small startup into the fintech space, and they are targeting the US market. We are trying to recruit somebody for the US market for them, but those roles are smaller right now. But obviously, because they already have a CMO and a BD head that they hired from another large organization which was into banking tech. But those could be your target segment organizations, Paramjeet. I would not target the big players out there. And we all know who the big players are, right?
Yeah, sure, sure. So I did try targeting some of the mid-sized firms. I mean, yeah, and it was more reactive. So maybe, I can be more proactive
Yeah,
going forward. Yeah.
I'm happy to chat one-on-one on that because
Sure,
this is
sure,
very
sure,
simple
sure, sure,
questions.
sure,
Maybe we
sure.
can take one
I'll
more question.
reach out to you in the interest of time and
Absolutely.
no interest of other
In
members who
fact,
may
yeah.
want to ask. Yeah, yeah.
In fact, my
Thank you.
LinkedIn is there. Anybody who wants to reach out, please feel free to reach out.
Sure.
We mentioned the LinkedIn details on the campaign promo, which was sent on WhatsApp. It's already
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can-
Thank you much. Yeah. Thank
And
you
you
very
can
much.
request for Sir's number also from the administrator. We'll be happy to share if that's okay
Sure.
with Sarjeev.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Thank
fine.
you.
As long as you can WhatsApp me and give me a context, that's okay. Because
Yeah,
there are these so many calls that happen these days which you don't take
absolutely.
because
Makes
they are
sense.
selling properties, loans, etc. So what?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
So, Aditya, if there are no further questions, can we have the vote of thanks, please? Or are there any questions? There's still questions. Gopichand, please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good morning.
Good
I
morning.
want to bring the discussion back to the main topic, which is how to handle the pink slip that was written. So, could you please share your thoughts on that? What should be a person doing during a journey where the person is handed over a pink slip?
So Gopi, I am not sure at what stage did you join because I think there was a lot of questions that Samir asked and there was a lot of perspective that is there. I would really suggest if you can watch because podcast is recorded and there are a lot of areas we picked up and I think I was
Correct.
able to
That's
answer
me.
some of the questions that you've asked. I would suggest maybe you can look at that and if you still have questions, you've sent me your resume earlier, you can call me again. So I would be happy to answer the questions.
Sure.
If
sir.
anything,
You
Sure,
can look up at the recording also. It was very clearly mentioned. I think there is a question from Ravi, which we can take next. But please be mindful, we have a hard stop in the next 5 minutes, please. Over to you, Ravi.
Yeah, sir. Like it's altogether like an oblique question. I don't have an experience on my books of trading, but can I get into trading if I have like those kind of skills? Because I'm coming from IFT, so like
I'm not, Ravi, I'm really not equipped to answer the question whether you get into trading or not because I'm not a trader myself. So maybe Gaurav would be a better person and you can reach out to him. Aditya can share his number because he's the financial advisor on the group. I'm not,
And,
sorry, I can't answer the question.
and we're going to soon have a podcast with him and a couple of other financial experts from IFT. I think that this question would be relevant for that forum if you want to hold on for that. Or are you referring to international trading, which is export import? What are
Yeah,
you referring to?
then I can answer that.
Are you referring to equity trading or are you referring to export import?
I'm referring to online that do digital, which you do at MCX and all those kind of things.
That's a separate podcast. We'll get a lot of financial specialists to it. Don't worry. Very soon.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, sir.
Paramjit, I think we answered your question, right? So, but we can still see your hand raised. So I understand that if you're not responding, your question's been answered. Aditya, we can please proceed with the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Sure, sir. So, on behalf of the Alumni Relations Committee, we extend our sincere gratitude to Mr. Sarjeev S for sharing his invaluable insights during today's session. Thank you, sir, for your expert advice on managing layoffs and personal advice on using social media, seeking mentorship, and dedicating time for personal growth. That has been really enlightening. We also deeply appreciate your thoughts on acquiring new skill sets, understanding trends in the current job market and the impact of technology on our career paths, your guidance on navigating job termination as an experienced professional, and your recommendations on targeting your industries and sectors have proved a practical roadmap for our future career success. Additionally, your advice on combating the tedious job application process has given us a fresh perspective on approaching it. Thank you for your time, sir, and we look forward to more fruitful collaborations with you in the future.
Thank you, Sarjeev. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Samir, for organizing this, and thank you so much, Aditya and Sanya, for managing the whole meeting. I truly appreciate it. And as I said, guys, there is no playbook to a career journey. It's a journey, and that's why it's called a journey. So enjoy it. Things will be up and down, but seek mentors from within IFT. There are a lot of people who are willing to help. A lot of my batchmates are there who can help you guys. Reach out to that. I think that'll be a good idea for you guys. So all the best to all of the people, and I'm sure everybody on this group will find their own niche and spaces. And wish you all the best, everyone.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Amit.